Welcome to ConFusion, Still Confusing, a virtual component of ConFusion, a science fiction and fantasy convention that takes place in Januaries in Novi, Michigan. Today's discussion is the stories behind Magic the Gathering with best-selling author Seanan McGuire and podcaster Taya Steere.
Hello, I hope y'all are as confused as we are, because we kind of exist in a perpetual state of not sure what the hell is going on. I'm Seanan McGuire. I write for Magic Story, which is the official online narrative of the Magic the Gathering trading card game, and have been playing Magic on and off since Alpha was released because I am very old. Which is a slightly horrifying sentence, but there is literally a person sitting in my living room right now who was born after Alpha.
Hi, I'm Taya Steere. I'm one of the members of the Goblin Lore podcast. We talk about magic story, mental health, all things goblin related. We just finished talking about the Lorwyn story, and I'm happy to be here talking magic story with Seanan today.
So when Confusion contacted me, their thing was you can do whatever you want. You can talk about whatever you like. Just find someone to talk to so it's not you rambling at a camera all by yourself for 20 minutes. And I mentioned that I had been an on and off Magic player. There were times when I was not playing. And I genuinely would have told you if you had asked me with full sincerity and no provocation at all that they had stopped Magic Story when they stopped publishing physical books that I could run across in bookstores. It is remarkably easy if you're not a Magic player, and annoyingly easy if you are a Magic player not to be aware of the existence of the narrative behind the Magic the Gathering card game.
Yeah, there's the flavor text on the cards, obviously, but that only tells a small part of the story. And for the last many years now, we've had some absolutely fantastic artists write or authors writing a story for us on the Magic website, which gets published for free, usually for us to read, with some exceptions of some novels like the one that Seanan has worked on recently, which I'm sure we'll be discussing. But there is the story really started in the late 90s. The early sets have flavor, but they didn't have stories behind them.
Yeah,
Later, they released some comic books and things like that that kind of supplemented the early story. Um, but it's been going on since the late 90s as a continual narrative that goes through each set. And yeah, for a long time, it was tied to novels that were released with every set. And for the last decade plus, it's been short stories on the website mostly, with an occasional novel.
yeah, and the mention that early sets had flavor rather than story is even more true than those of us who know about the story may necessarily realize. I have some friends that worked on those earliest sets that, were working on alpha, on beta, on the times when those first flavor texts were coming out. And there was basically no guiding body. There was no one saying, you know what? No, this Phyrexia concept is kind of weird and we don't understand what you're trying to get at there. Let's do something else. So they just threw things at the wall, and now 30 years later, we are dealing with whatever stuck.
Yeah, like they just named a bunch of cards after Urza. Who is Urza? Nobody knew. Now we know he's like the greatest jerk in the multiverse,
Yeah,
but
Urza's a dick.
but at the beginning it was just, well, here's Urza's bauble and here's Urza's glasses and here's Urza's mine, and we didn't really find out who Urza was until later.
Yeah, which I think is part of why it's possible to think that there isn't a story, because if you were someone who didn't go to Walden Books in the 90s and didn't see those early novels, they didn't make it clear from the beginning because they didn't know. Magic Story developing into what it is today was kind of a surprise for everyone, which is great. But I would argue that Magic Story did the multiverse concept bigger and better than Marvel has. Everyone knows what a multiverse is now because of Across the Spider-Verse and the spiders. But Magic the Gathering's entire concept is multiverse, that everyone is a wizard from a different plane, and sometimes we come to punch the crap out of each other for enrichment.
Yeah, and all the creatures you're summoning and the lands you even play all represent places in these planes or people or things that you're bringing to your fight with you. And as story has become more important, we've gotten more and more legendary creatures, which are named characters in Magic. We get more and more every set. They used to be very sparse. They didn't even exist when the game released. They
Mhm.
came, a couple of expansions afterwards. But these are kind of our story point characters that we have. And then we have, some sets have, a lot of sets will have one off legendary characters, which we might get a blurb about. But then there's other characters that have been in the story for years and years and years, sometimes decades. And we get to see these characters develop and get to follow their stories over this time.
And that is both a wonderful thing and sometimes a problematic thing, as it is in any shared universe. I know your favorite, not normally a legendary creature, but character is Chandra, who
Mm-hmm.
is a pyrokinetic. Is pyrokinetic the term for what she is, or she's a flame mage?
She's a pyromancer.
She's a pyromancer. That's the word I was
Yeah,
not finding. I'm like, I got
yeah,
spark mage, but that's Rowan. She's a pyromancer. She creates and controls fire. Because she is a planeswalker, she's not normally a legendary creature. That's kind of getting into game mechanics a little bit more than is really story relevant. But Chandra gets written by lots of different people across lots of different eras. My favorite character is kind of a toss-up, but one of them is another planeswalker named Nahiri. And Nahiri is a lithomancer. She works with rocks and to a certain degree metal. And Nahiri is kind of our CPTSD Magic the Gathering poster child. In a universe where everyone needs therapy, Nahiri is
oh,
winning at needing therapy. Uh,
yes.
and
Planeswalkers need therapy so bad.
Pretty much all of them, yeah. I would
Yeah,
argue that Tyvar Kell is like the only planeswalker who doesn't need therapy because Tyvar Kell is what if Gaston, but he was actually a Disney prince. He
mm-hmm.
is big of heart, sweet of mind, dumb of ass.
Yeah,
And I love him. But what Taya has to live with is the fact that my Chandra is not her Chandra, and my Chandra, if I write her, is going to be just as canonical as her Chandra. And that's the problem comic book readers have all the time, forever. You mentioned that I had a book coming out. I do. It's called Omens of Chaos, and it is our first print Magic the Gathering novel since a book called War of the Spark by Greg Weisman, who is a very nice man. Greg is very sweet. But part of why people love Chandra as much as they do is because she is a pansexual disaster who was
yeah,
introduced in part with a really beautiful will they, won't they relationship with another planeswalker, an elf named Nissa from the plane of Zendikar. And then Greg wrote his book, which, big book, most exposure a lot of people will have to Chandra, in which Chandra pretty much comes out like a Tumblr kid in 2021 and says, I like dick, only dick, dick forever. That is not as exaggerated as I would like it to be. Um, and the reaction to that was so bad. The backlash from our community was so bad that it basically put a nail in the coffin of the Magic the Gathering print books.
yeah. The next set had no story because they canned the story after the set was already developed, because the backlash was so bad. So we had
Mhm.
a set, Theros Beyond Death, that had no story. We got a slideshow, basically summarizing the plot. Before they went back to just web fiction instead of the novels, which
Mhm.
thankfully they did, because since that time they've had some amazing authors in to do the stories.
Yeah, and I do want to be very clear. I do not blame Greg Weisman for what happened. The story of what happened with War of the Spark has come out in bits and pieces on the open internet. So this is not Tales Out of School, but basically those books were commissioned during a time when Magic Story was in a handoff period between not internal to Wizards of the Coast and internal, and he was given the wrong character Bible for Chandra. But all the Magic Story authors have spent the last decade almost. No, actually, is it a decade at this point?
2019, so it's getting
7 years. It's the better part of a
yeah
decade
7 years.
trying
Yeah,
to walk back that book because that book is canonical. Yay. There have been some representations of my favorite characters, Nahiri especially, where I look at them and I'm like, no, that's just wrong. That is not Nahiri, but it is because
Yeah,
that's
she
how it's
just did
shared
a
universe
she did
works.
a oops all genocide attempt.
She's done a couple
But
oops all genocides.
yeah.
Though I am a huge Nahiri apologist, and at least one of those oops all genocides I can explain perfectly well, which is a terrible, terrible sentence now that I come to think about it. Um, but the basic setup for the Magic multiverse, if we've gotten you curious at all about Magic Story, and the thing about Magic Story, the big thing is that it's huge. So it's very daunting, it's very intimidating. But what
Hmm.
I recommend is just look through the sets that have stories on the website until you find one that sounds interesting to you, and then read those stories. And
Yeah.
that will give you a starting point. Nope, nope,
I
you're first.
also highly recommend the Multiverse in 80 Minutes by Spice 8 Rack as a way to get just a introduction to Magic Story
Mhm.
at a very frantic pace. But it's like 2 years old now, but it basically catches up the entire history of the Magic story up to that point.
Yeah, so all you really need to know to follow Magic Story, there is a multiverse. There are planes upon planes upon planes. They are different and distinct levels of reality. For most of known recorded time, you could not go from one to the other without extremely powerful magic. Really unusual circumstances. The only people who could go from plane A over here to plane C over here are what we call planeswalkers. And those are people who have a special innate magic that allows them to jump from plane to plane. Every plane is basically its own genre. So, Ravnica is very much fantasy New York. It's what if we did high fantasy set in a city? It's intrigue and guilds and people being dicks to each other and really good coffee.
Uh-huh.
Innistrad, on the other hand, is Victorian horror, and you are probably going to either die or get your guts sucked out, or possibly be reanimated, or all three. There are options.
Yeah.
Well,
And there's even options on how you get reanimated.
yeah, which is great. Whereas Duskmorn is modern 1980s style horror. And 1980s is not as modern as we want to think it is, but honestly, I don't want to see a plane that is truly modern horror because modern horror has gotten a little too mean for me. And so you wait till you find a plane that suits something you already like, and then just start reading there. We still have planeswalkers. They are people that can move from plane to plane easily. Right now, we have a system called Omen Paths, which is basically invasive cosmic kudzu from a plane called Kaldheim that connects the planes and allows normal people, like you and me, to walk from plane to plane. I think this is a terrible idea, and I'm just waiting for the Innistradi flu to start wiping out entire planes of existence. I don't think Magic the Gathering is going to let me do that, but I really want to. And if you know that, you honestly know enough to follow Magic. A lot of Magic the Gathering planes have become Dungeons and Dragons settings, so you may have encountered them and not even realized that you were playing in a Magic setting.
Yeah, I played a multi-year Ravnica campaign, which was fantastic. Shout out to Michelle Rapp, who was the GM of that game, and you can check out her art if you want. But yeah, it's Strixhaven, the upcoming set, has a D&D setting as well, which
Mhm.
is Magic's take on Wizard School.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I am so happy that we are doing so much focusing on Magic's take on Wizard School because Strixhaven understands that it's going to have a wide and diverse student body, and it's not putting any of us on the bigotry bus to Turf Town. Like it is magical. Literally. My book is set at Strixhaven, the magic school, because that is what I was told to do by Wizards of the Coast. But I love Strixhaven as a place. I have a Silver Quill College bracelet on right now. It's really nice to have a wide, flexible magical school that has made it very, very clear from the start that everyone is welcome and it's not going to go that direction.
hmm Yeah, and now they're starting their whole like multiversal um, training thing with the Omen Pass Open. It's like, oh, we're going to
Mhm.
take students from everywhere, not just
Yep.
local students.
And Talaria, which is the major college on Dominaria, is kind of pissed off about the sharking of educational potential.
Not to be confused with Tulare Community College, which is a totally different thing.
Yeah, Talarian Community College is a Magic the Gathering. Is it considered a podcast when it's a video series on YouTube?
He's a YouTuber,
Yeah,
but
the professor is a YouTuber who runs Talarian Community College, which is a Magic the Gathering game discussion cast. Um,
mm,
it is
but
not, for the most part, about Magic Story, but he's a great guy.
no, but it's based in the original. The name is based in Magic Story. Teleria, going back to Urza, was Urza's magic school back in the old story. Terrible
Mhm.
things happened there. Uh,
Mostly Urza.
Mostly Urza, yeah. Some Karn, uh, but yeah. So that's kind of ancient history at this point, but that some of the old books are really good too. So if you're interested in reading about wizard eugenics and all the terrible things Urza did, you can check out some of the classic books like Planeswalker and Bloodlines.
Mhm.
Uh,
It's just important to remember that those of us who are writing Magic Story today do not endorse Urza. He was
no,
just kind of there, and we're real sorry.
yeah, he got what he deserved.
He did. In the end, he got what he deserved. I think the main thing that I would want to say about Magic Story is that it's like that shadow that passes underneath your boat in a horror movie. It is so much bigger than you think it is and so easy to overlook, but I cannot
Mhm.
recommend highly enough sticking your head out of the boat and looking down.
Yeah, it's really great. I mean, it's kept my interest for more than 30 years now. I was paying attention to Magic Story even during the times I wasn't actually playing Magic quite a bit. And that was one thing that kind of kept me in the community. And now, I talk about it for fun on a regular basis. And feel free to, if you want a good place to dip in, check out the story of the last set, Lorwyn, because it's kind of a kicking off point for what is upcoming in the next set.
Yeah, that's true. Lorwyn is so Magic used to have a structure we called blocks. It's hard to do finger quotes with three fingers. I'm not sure what I thought I was doing there. Magic used to do a thing called blocks where they would have three sets in a row that were all set on the same plane. And people who have been involved in Magic for a long time tend to be nostalgic for blocks, even though they were kind of terrible in a lot of ways, which is why we moved away from them. But at the time, if you started following a story in release one, you could keep following it through to release three, and that gave us a lot more space for story. Though sometimes that story had to be padded to fit in that space. Well,
Hmm.
with Lorwyn Eclipsed, which just wrapped up, and I wrote the main story, which was both great and the most frustrating experience of my Magic life because I wrote the entire thing in iambic pentameter, and then at the last minute, one of the characters got her name changed, and it broke the pentameter. So I had to abandon my conceit of having done the entire thing like I was Shakespeare on a meth binge. But Lorwyn Eclipsed has as its central characters a group of students from, again, Strixhaven. 2026 is both the year of the horse and the year of Strixhaven, and in Discworld terms, the year of the curious squid. But those students from Strixhaven are going to be showing up again in the next set, which is called Secrets of Strixhaven, as our central characters. I did not write that main story. Um, Roy, who does the assignment, says I am writing exactly as much main story as he thinks I can handle. I think I'm going to start hunting other Magic authors for sport.
Well, I'm always happy to hear read your stories, and I love your behind the scenes extras that you do for them too.
That has been such a fun thing to do. I write a lot of Magic main story right now because I am pretty fast, pretty dependable, and at this point, they know that I can talk about Magic story basically endlessly without saying anything that I have not yet been approved to say. It's a level of media training that took 15 years, and Magic doesn't have time to make that kind of investment in its authors, so I'm A plus. But I write a lot of Magic main story, and it's great, good fun, and I enjoy it immensely. And that is why they let me write a book.
Which I am very much looking forward to reading.
I am very much
And it
looking
comes
forward to
out
it.
in
It comes
April,
out
right?
in April. However, if you are local to the Seattle area, this will do no good whatsoever because by the time this is released, the event will have passed. We are going to be signing and giving away early ARCs at Emerald City Comic Con next weekend in Seattle, Washington. So we've got 2 more announced in-universe Magic the Gathering sets, both of which are coming out this year. That's Secrets of Strixhaven in June? May, in
April
May.
or
And
May.
then we've got that's being followed by Reality Fracture, which we don't really know anything about yet. So we're all very big into theorizing and very excited and hoping that it's another time spiral-esque situation where we get to see familiar characters in new ways and in kind of twisted presentations. And I do not recommend getting into Magic Story with that set because you will inevitably fall in love with a version of a character that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
So please either hop in now, hop in with Secrets of Strixhaven, or wait and start in 2027 with whatever we're doing next.
Yeah. And there's, 30 plus years of story to go back and read in the meantime.
That is true.
Thank you very much to Seanan and Taya for this amazing discussion. We've included where you can find them and where you can pre-order Seanan's book, Strixhaven, Omens of Chaos, in the video description below. Again, you can see more discussions like this at ConFusion conventions held in Novi, Michigan in late January 2027.